atmospheric piano loop. Vibrant, spacious and dark. A combination of endless repetition and subtle melodic variation to keep you hooked until the end. Use it to make a full track or just as is. This week I received questions about the piano loop that I made for last week's episode on how to make your own kick drums. And there were two questions. Number one was, how do you make a piano loop like this? And number two was, how did I process last week's piano loop? Normally I like to separate the music theory from the music production, but I guess in this episode we're going to try something different, and it will be more or less like a hybrid episode. So let's get creative. Let's break down the music theory of making a chord loop into 4 steps. And the first one is the right chord progression. Some chord progressions are more suitable for becoming a loop than others. When you make a traditional chord progression, you want it to build tension and for it to go somewhere. In other words, it is goal-oriented. But when it comes to making chord loops, it's almost the straight opposite. You don't want your progression to be too goal-oriented or to build up tension. Here's what happens. When you build tension, inevitably there will be a moment of release. This creates an energy drop and stops the music in a way, because you need to start building up tension again. While if you have a chord progression that is less goal-oriented, then you'll achieve a more meandering effect, and in the ultimate loop you create an endless circle. So how do you translate this into a chord progression? You want to mainly use chords that are a third or a second apart, especially when it comes to the chords before and after your first chord. And when it comes to the movement, what works well is when you alternate between going up and down. Progressions that you want to avoid are obvious dominant progressions, such as the 1-4-5 in major, or for example the 1-7-6-5 in minor, because these are very goal-oriented. You want the loop to float in a way. Step 2. The note spacing in each chord. An often used way of playing piano in popular music and electronic music is by playing only fifths with the left hand, instead of playing full chords. And there are multiple reasons to why this is so popular. Let's look at the piano. First of all, the left hand of this piano loop is more towards the low register. When I play full chords here, it sounds muddy and less defined. By playing only fifths, the sound becomes clear and stable. And the second reason is that now I leave everything open for the right hand, which is going to play my melody. Now I have complete freedom with the melody to make the chords major, minor, suspended, or maybe even augmented. Well, and I think you get the idea. Step 3. How to deal with the melody. Making a good melody for a chord loop is a subtle art, because it needs to be recognizable enough for people to be able to sing it, but it should not be too distracting, because you don't want it to stick out, since mostly the loop is not going to be your main element. Because the left hand is only playing fifths, I want to accentuate the thirds of each chord with the melody. And this already creates some kind of melodic outline. Now I start circling around these notes to make sure that the melody has some sense of expansion. And very important, what I did here is my loop is 4 bars, but my melody is 8 bars. The fact that the melody is longer than the chord progression creates a lot of interest. For example, what really creates a lot of interest is to have an upbeat or syncopation before some of your chords. And this works especially well with your last chord before the loop starts again, in combination with a note that's directly above or below one of the notes that's in your next chord. Without any extra rhythm, this isn't very interesting, is it? In my original melody, some notes are repeated, while others come just before the beat. Some of the melodic lines even lead you directly into the next chord. With all of these techniques, you create rhythmic interest and you avoid the loop sounding too boring and unoriginal. One more tip before you continue to the music production side of this video. Keep in mind that the register in which your loop is played is very important. Because when I play this loop, for example, 2 octaves higher, it sounds very light, bright, joyful, and I don't know if I like it. While when I play it in the original register that I wrote it in, it sounds nice and dark and a little bit ambient, and it just has a lot more body to it. Okay, here we have arrived in my project view, and as you can see, here's the kick that we made last week. And this is the loop. As you can see, I have multiple tracks open here. I have the piano open, and I have a reverb, and I have a pitch shifter. And I'm going to shortly show you what all of them do. First of all, the piano that I use is Noir from Native Instruments. The next thing that I added is Neutron 3. And what this one does is I take out some of the frequencies that I don't like in the lower mid spectrum, 352 Hz. I have a small dip, and I'm boosting the highs of the piano to give it a little bit more air. And I have a low cut here, and it's set to 51 kHz because I want to have a little bit more room for the kick here. Now I'm going to add this side chaining plugin, but I'm not going to do it fully. It's on 50%, as you can see, actually 56. This is what it sounds like when I put it to 100%. So I think you can agree with me that that's way too much. Actually, or at least that's not what I'm looking for. I'm going to activate the send again. And why I put the reverb on a send track is because I have a lot more control over the reverb. Because I can take out frequencies, I can do anything that I want. And when it's on the piano track, it will also affect the sound of the piano. So that's why I like to parallel process my reverbs always. Here I have the Valhalla Vintage Verb. It's set to concert hall, a very long decay time of 5.19 seconds. And I have 31 milliseconds of pre-delay, so that's the time it takes for the reverb to actually start. And the next thing that I did is I have here an EQ, and I'm scooping out all of the lower frequencies that I don't want because they're going to muddy up the signal. And I'm taking out some of the highs which I don't find usable and also start to sound a little bit artificial. And now the piano sounds like this, without the kick this time. Sounds very nice, spacious, ambient. I love this reverb. Now I'm going to add the pitch shift, and the pitch shift is also on an aux track. So what I'm doing is I'm sending the wet signal, the processed signal from this here, and I'm sending it to this track, and this is going into a pitch shifter. But before we reach the pitch shifter, I'm doing some things with it. Again, I scoop out some of the frequencies that I don't want. So I don't want those ultra highs because they're going to really garbage up my signal. And also I don't want those lower mids and the lows. So I'm taking them out also. I have a high pass at 834 Hz. And the next thing that I have added here is a compressor because I want to stabilize the signal. I want to completely squish the reverb signal that goes into here. Because the next plugin that I have added is the decapitator. And this is an overdrive or distortion unit from Soundtoys. And if you ask me, this is really one of the best ones out there. The next thing that I have in line here is finally the pitch shifter. And this is just the stock pitch shifter from Reaper. And what I did is I shifted everything an octave up. And of course it's set to 100% wet, so no dry signal. And I'm boosting the level here, I'm boosting the volume. Let's listen to the pitch shifter in solo mode. Sounds very cool, doesn't it? It has this I don't know, it has this kind of processed sound to it, which I like. And I put it really low in the background, but it just adds some extra spark, you know? And now with the kick added one more time. Especially in today's music, piano loops, you see them almost everywhere. Together with this video, you can start to create your own inspiring loops. If you like these kind of mixed tutorials, so music production and music theory in one video, then be sure to let me know, because only if you like them, I'll do more of them in the future. In any case, stay inspired, keep creating music, and for now, see you next time.